You are tuned in to the Leading Edge Conversations podcast. We're about to dive deep, so strap yourself in and get ready to explore the leading edge of consciousness. Hello and welcome to this episode of Leading Edge Conversations, the show created to bring you deep wisdom from people living on the leading edge of consciousness. And I'm your host, Luke Scott III. Today we have an incredible guest for you. We have Sagar Sumaria, and Sagar is an absolute superstar for so many reasons. But he's the founder of holisticeconomy.com, and he is creating a whole new way for us to create this system in the world that will revolutionize the way we live. And it's a big plan. It's his plan to do this and get this implemented by 2030. So we have 10 years. And we're going to go deep into all of that stuff. Sagar is an amazing human in lots of other ways too. I'm proud to call him my friend. And yeah, super excited to see what he wants to share with you today. Sagar, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Hello, Luke. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm glad to be here and get engaged in some real deep conversations.
You ready to go deep?
Yep, let's go deep.
That's my favorite way to go. There's these memes on the internet, if you've ever seen. It's like there's a picture of a black hole or like something, and some kind of warp, and there's two people walking through it, and it says deep conversations with soulmates is one of the best feelings in the entire world. And I think that is true. You know, when you have a great conversation, you leave feeling expanded, right? And so much more than you were before it. So let's create some absolute magic. And everyone who's tuning in, please do comment below. We'd love to know your thoughts, feelings on everything that we talk about. I can guarantee you've probably not heard of some of this stuff or even thought about some of this stuff we're going to share today.
Let's go from the North Pole to the South Pole. Let's go right deep down.
Okay, let's do that. That sounds good to me. So, Sagar, tell everybody a little bit about your Holistic Economy 2030 project. What's going on? What's this all about?
Right. Holistic economy is, to put it in a few words, it's to manifest a holistic economy that is fair for all sovereign beings. And what I mean by that is it's a play on words of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I've extensively looked at for the last few years. And having looked at it in detail, I've noticed there's quite a few anomalies and there's quite a few areas that need improvement. I use the word holistic because it's not just about being sustainable or buying the right products. It's about a lot more than that. And for me, the word holistic embodies the whole, holism, and everyone or every stakeholder in society. And yeah, that's what I've been working on, doing research in for the last few years. And now with this pandemic that we're in for the last few months, what's the outcome after that, after the lockdown? I really see this as an opportunity to re-envision how we want to see our society, our planet, and our community.
Yeah, it's a big thing, right? There's a big move, a big shift on the planet. I'm really seeing it and really feeling it. So many people are waking up right now, and they're realizing that the way we've been abusing ourselves and our planet and all our neighbors, and when I say neighbors, I mean every single person, animal that lives on this planet, we've just been creating this system that is unsustainable. And then the UN brought out their Sustainable Development Goals. But there is a lot that's not in the scope of those development goals. I do see those development goals as a big positive step forwards, and there's a lot of really great stuff in there. But I know when we've been talking about this in the past, and I look at your Holistic Economy 2030 plan, there's so much more that needs to be done, right, for us to truly have a world where everyone thrives. Because people don't often think about the consequences of even subtle things. I know I saw you speak at an event and you were talking about the bamboo plates and the bamboo straws and stuff, right? and the effects of that. Can you just give people that example? Talk about the paper straws. It's really funny.
Yeah, so I think everyone's quite aware through the media, the barraging of information being told to us by the media and the government about your the plastic straw, and you're not recycling it. You're sort of really the instigator of damage on the planet. So I looked at the alternatives, like the bamboo straw and also the bamboo cup, which you'd get in the coffee shops. And I looked at it, and there's two issues. One issue is that we transition away from the current solution we've got, which was like the plastic cup, which was a single polymer material, or maybe two polymers, two parts, and the straw would have been one material. And in an effort to be green and sustainable, we've decided to go to the plant-based one. But with the plant-based one, there is issues that we've overlooked. And a really good example for me that I got told by a lady I met at a conference last year was she told me her daughter had bought a drink or maybe a smoothie or something from one of these food chain stores, and she'd got the bamboo cup and the bamboo straw, and it was possibly a hot drink. Yes, it was a hot drink, maybe a coffee or something. And she was slurping the drink through the straw, and due to the heat and also the fact that the polymer, which is a plant-based one, is not as strong or maybe as durable as the synthetic polymers, the straw began to melt into the drink. So that was to do with the straw. And then the other issue was with regards to the bamboo cup. And I basically just did a 30-second search on the internet to see what is the makeup of the material of the bamboo cup. And what I found, which was really quite shocking, and I'm surprised it's been so overlooked, is that there's two ingredients in the bamboo cup which need to be there as some sort of solvent, some sort of glue. But the side effects of those ingredients are well-known carcinogens causing liver and damage of the liver and some other organs in the body. And while the plastic might have been and still is perceived as bad for the planet, it was a single polymer, much easier to recycle as long as it is recycled. But it was not something that was possibly getting adversely affected by the hot drink, like the bamboo cup one. And my whole premise or my whole point on this example is that whether it's the bamboo cup or whether it's a cotton bag, at the end of the day, we need to have oversight when shifting from one product to the other, thinking the new one is the best alternative. But we have to use a bit of hindsight and say, well, how much better is this alternative? Is there going to be any negative implications as well as positive ones before we proceed? And that's the issue with these alternatives, that an alternative suggested, and because of maybe vested interests in that new alternative from industry, there's very little open debate to actually say the end goal here is what's right for the planet, not right for the bottom line of XYZ corporations.
Yeah, a big thing I learned from you is that we need to think more about the consequences of what we do and look at all the consequences, because oftentimes, especially when it comes to food products and food production, we don't think about what has to happen in order for that food to get to us. And I remember actually one of the first times we met in person, I was running this vegan picnic event, and you came along and you had your bag of food, right? And it was all stuff you'd got from a farmer's market, and it was so different. And you were one of the first people I'd met who was really an advocate for this way of living, as being as close to nature as possible, and really reducing the length of the cycle for how our food gets to us, right, from farm to plate, essentially. And I know you created an incredible group to help people find organic farmers markets in London, which I think is really, really wonderful. And I just love the way that your brain works. It's very different to most people who just want convenience, but convenience comes with a cost. And I think it's so great, the work that you're doing. I guess for anyone who's listening now, what are some things you think are really incredible that you do and you have implemented that could help other people and help our planet? What would you say if your top few things would be?
That I would do, I would suggest other people.
Yeah, if we could wave a magic wand and we could implement these tomorrow, and everyone on the planet would be doing them, what would you think would be some really key things?
I think firstly we need to look at everything in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of which I think I remember I can't remember the order, but it would have been food, water, shelter, clothing, and warmth. And I think at the moment we've become so besotted with technology, not to say that technology is bad. Technology is obviously it's good, it's a good tool. But we've become so besotted with technology and many of these other superficial connections that we forget what are the basic needs. And within the basic needs, for example, I choose the example of food that you alluded to, is everything's become so quick and easy for us to source, even if it is vegan and it's organic, and organic is great, but there is other problems. But we are still very cognizant to where are these products coming from and how they're sourced. So a few good things that I think could be done, and why I would like to manifest, like tomorrow, even in the next few minutes, is a system which is based on provenance, and provenance meaning that we know where our food is coming from. It's a local, and being an advocate, a vegan and an ardent vegan, I would say a supply which is of food produce, whether it's seeds, crops, or grains, that is as close to us within our respective countries as possible. A lot of the foods that we do get, of course, they are coming from India and Africa and the global south. And it's going to take time to actually correct the miseducation to these countries. And if we start sourcing foods from the UK, like whether it's Edinburgh or whether it's France, which is much closer, we still then have to make sure that those countries get the knowledge and education to actually their income would be less because we're buying less from them, but we can actually learn from each other and make sure that their local systems are in place as well. So the things that we could be seeing being done now, and it's actually already happening, is farmers markets, which are slowly sprouting up in more parts of the UK. In the last few years, we've known about the food banks, which are flourishing, which is not a very good thing that they're shooting up so much. But out of the food banks, people are asking more questions about, okay, we can get the food banks, they're there, but the food banks maybe not have the healthiest food. So we've got these farmers markets, and whether the size of the farmers are big ones or large ones, they are throwing away 40% of their food. Before it gets out of the gate, they're throwing away that much. So for me, it's all about if you can't buy the food from farmers markets, or if they're too far away, we then have to look at where the allotments are, which is something that used to be a pastime and probably still is in many areas of the UK. Learn how to be growing our food ourselves in our own gardens or in our own areas of greenery. And the reason why that's so fundamentally important is because when we know where our food is coming from, and whether it's from the farmer's market or our own garden, we have much more sovereignty. We have much more control of our food. And another thing that comes with food that is closer to us is the connection. Just think of the connection that is there when the mangoes or the grapefruits that I've bought for the last few weeks, they're coming from some part of South America. It's lovely fruit, delicious, but what's the connection between me and the person who sold it to me? The person I bought it from was from the local corner shop, but that is just a till register. Where's the connection between me and the person who is maybe the producer, maybe the farmer? And one of the things that is missing in the whole sustainable economy thing is that there's very little conversation talking about what's the connection between me and the person I'm buying it from. So yeah, I could buy the food which is vegan and organic, but where's the connection between us? When I go to my farmers markets, I'm not just buying the vegetables and then putting them in my bag and just leaving. I'm having a real eye-to-eye connection. There's a friendly banter. And it's just like being down the pub with some friends, just having a good conversation. So that's one of the many things I would say, that local food, locally sourced, our seeds, 60% of our seeds worldwide are owned by 2 or 3 companies. So we need to have sovereignty of our seeds. If we are not able to access the farmers' markets, or if they've been restricted for some reason from getting to the markets, what sovereignty or access do we have to our own seeds, which are organic, and what I understand, heirloom seeds, which are not owned by a corporation, but by the people. I'm seeing beyond the farmers' markets, more farmers' markets being opened up in schools, in the sense where kids are being taught how to grow their own food, and then they're selling their own food to the parents or the communities in that area. And obviously there is a massive wake-up happening around the world amongst the adults, but the children, they're the ones who are really, while being muddled between all this technology, they're also being taught about this very beautiful thing of you can grow these tomatoes or cucumbers, and it's right in front of you. And it's really teaching the youth how, if in the future they decide to sell products like this or buy products, they're having an impact not just in terms of natural healthy food, but they're also having a massive impact in terms of the economy. A figure that's been flagged around for many years is about local economy in terms of the money that you spend in the local economy. And it's been said, for every pound that you purchase locally, and I mean locally, like I could have bought something in London, the produce might have been grown in Edinburgh. It's still local. It's within my country. And for every pound that I spend in London, let's say, it's turning into £7 for the whole economy. Whereas and also with that pound I bought, I've not gone to a shop, I've gone straight to the farmer. Most times I ask who else is between the person who's harvesting the food and me. Is it just you? He says sometimes it's just him, he's the main farmer, and sometimes it is him picking the vegetables or the produce and then selling it on. So it's just one or two people. The money I'm giving them is turning to £7. It's sustaining jobs for the local economies, for hundreds of companies, not just one massive conglomerate or one massive company. And also a conversation that we have is how this pound I'm giving them is turning to £7. It's filtering not just into the local economy, it's actually staying into the tax system. Whereas most of all these big companies who have massively, hugely benefited from the last 2 months of the lockdown, because people have bought like crazy whatever products, toilet roll or food or anything from the supermarkets, their profits have flourished. And they pay very little tax or zero tax. And that's another thing, that when we start buying local and connecting with each other, the money filters back into the system, back into our taxes. And that's the money that we wouldn't have to be looking at government saying, where's the money for the doctors and nurses or the roads or the infrastructure? It should naturally come back into the system from our tax system, the HMRC. It should be, or however it's structured, I don't know. And it should go filter down to the local councils and boroughs to then spend, whether it's be on a local, regional or national level. And those are the things that we can really do, which is, how do you do it? Just learning where your local farmers market is, having a connection with them, just having a banter, buying the vegetables, the fruits. And there you go. The markets I go to every week, up until a few weeks ago, they were doing some repairs now, but there's a Tesco's right next to it. There's a big bread shop right next to the farmer's market. I'm getting my produce from the market, which is 50 metres on the other side. People are still going into the supermarkets. Marked difference of 50 metres, but one side is paying no tax, no connection with the food. They're replacing the cash tillers or the people selling the food down the cash register with automated machines, and completely disjointed from society. Whereas the market, 50 sellers, produce has to, by the law of farmers markets, come from within the UK. It's organic, it's sustainable, it's local, it's contributing to the local economy. And it's really not just seen as just going to the shops to buy something. You'll get families, you get individuals going there as a bit of a day out, learn about food and really learn about, for me, the one thing that we've lost is connection in society. And I said earlier that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, water, clothing, shelter and warmth. But all of those are only really feasible if there is a connection between all of us that have got those. We can have all of those hierarchy of needs, but also we are all searching for connection with each other as well. Without connection, we still might be well catered for, but that connection, then if the connection is missing, then it's inevitable that there is going to be a breakdown of some sort in society.
It sounds wonderful, Saga. To me personally, it's this idea of creating communities that support each other, that are connected. I heard stories from my grandparents about how they never used to have to lock their doors because everyone trusted each other and supported each other, and you would never think to steal or take something from your neighbor. And if anybody needed anything, then someone was there with an open hand to offer it to them. And you would grow your own stuff. It just sounds absolutely wonderful and idyllic. And it's one of the reasons I'm so on board with what you're doing. Is I would love for us to create more of that. And I know there are places that already exist that are like that. It's just not the norm right now. And it's so important, I think, for us to do things like this and just share with people, look, we can change the way that we live. And we've been really blessed, I believe, with this whole situation that's happened in 2020. And I don't want to give it too much airtime right now. Maybe we'll talk about it more later. But I think it's given really everyone a chance to really just stop, check in with themselves. Do we need to keep living the way that we were before? What kind of things are we shifting and changing? And I know your holistic economy model, you cover everything. It's a super deep program, and I recommend everyone go to Sagar's website, check it out. You'll learn all about the different things and suggestions he makes on how we can live a more kind and compassionate world. I think that was one of the big things, Sagar, when I met you the first time in person. You told me about your faith, which is Jainism, and I'd never heard of it before. And you were talking to me about this concept of being kind and like kindness to all beings. And I just think that's the kind of world I want to live in.
Yeah, Jainism is just like you have prophets and you have these in Jainism, prophets. We don't call them we call them Tirthankaras, which is like we don't even like to look at them as a god. We have statues in our temples, but we don't. For me, the basic philosophy is that there shouldn't really even be statues, or there shouldn't even be blocks. Tirthankara was Mahavir. And the faith of Jainism is basically based on ahimsa, which is Sanskrit for non-violence. And of course, himsa would be violence, which it's not about opposing violence, but it's making sure that there is, yes, we are showing non-violence to all beings, but we have to have a balance in our thoughts as well, whether through physical thought or psychological thought. The basic premise is that we do as little or no harm as possible, not just to humans, but to all other beings. So the Tirthankara was around about 500 BC. It was around about the same time as and it goes back thousands of years before that, but we don't know how long it goes back because Mahavira was the 24th Tirthankara. So that's the faith itself. For me, I like to see my faith as something which is really about nature, which it is. But I feel even in Jainism, we've forgotten. And I'll give you an example, which is I've asked people in my faith or in faiths, other faiths, and I've said that if you were to go to your mosque or your synagogue or whatever it is, or even my temple tomorrow, and if that temple was not there anymore, if it was turned into a pile of rubble, how would you feel? Would you be able to stand outside that pile of rubble and pray to it like a regular temple? And people will say, well, that's, absurd. I says, well, you might have had an earthquake. You want to go to the temple? Would you still pray? There's no statues, they're all broken. Can you still pray to that pile of rubble? They says, well, yeah, I guess so. There's maybe some confusion or hesitance at first. And then I say, okay, you go back the next day, and that pile of rubble is not there anymore, but actually it's a forest. And they say, why would it be a forest? I says, well, this is what it was before it got built a temple there, before the land was ravaged of its possible forest over hundreds of years. It was a forest. So could you pray to that forest? And they look at me as if I'm to suggest something really absurd. And the reason I say this is when I was in India 5-6 years ago, I was at a laughter yoga thing. I met some group of Japanese people there. And one of the girls I met, she's a really good friend, I says, can you show me a picture of your temple? Like the Buddhist, I don't know if you call them temples or monasteries. And she showed me a picture, and she was showing me a picture of a forest. And I says, where's your temple, your statue? And then she got a finger out and she pointed right in the bottom of the corner of the photo. I says, what are you pointing at? And she says there was a tiny statue, like maybe the size of my thumb. And she says, and this is what she told me, but I've never been to Japan, that these tiny statues of Buddha are all over Japan, on the sides of the road. Who we do worship, the real entity that we worship, is what Buddha came from, is what we all came from, which is the forests. And that's the premise of my faith, that's the premise of Buddhism, Hinduism. I feel that's the premise of all faiths, because whether it's Christ 2,000 years ago or Jainism and Hinduism before that, thousands of years ago, before there was any of us humans who came to Earth, however we came, it was just a pile of earth. I mean, it was a massive, it was earth. There was species there. Maybe there was humans in some another species before. I don't know what they were, but it was just earth. And there was no, was there a faith? When did religion come? Maybe a few thousand years ago. But the faith then has always been nature. And I like to just lament on the fact that when I see so much confusion and collision between different faiths, I then look at the animals and I laugh at myself and what us humans have done to ourselves, and think, any chance that there's a dog, one type of dog going to another type, possibly, but are there Alsatians going to Alsatians and saying, well, you're of a different faith to me, you're of a different type of dog? No, they're all species. They're all... I've even seen videos of where a tiger goes up running to a mother deer and its baby deer, and the mother deer runs away, leaving the baby deer there scared, and the mother was scared as well. And the lion or the tiger just goes up, just licking its tongue on the head of the baby deer. It was not for some reason, it was not interested in mauling the deer for its consumption. And while these are all animals, they're all different species. So one species was just for that moment decided, you know what, for some reason I'm not hungry, or I've just decided that I'm seeing you, baby deer, the child of that mother deer. I'm all of a sudden, for some reason, seeing you as if you were my own child. And the different species looking after each other, for me, that's really a sort of, a warning to us that how we as a species, just one type of species, are destroying each other, and how we really need to come back together. So yes, I call Jainism a faith, but actually it's a way of life. It's what was before every religion that was there. And at the end of the day, I feel that between all these faiths, we are probably only disagreeing on maybe 10% of something, which is the intricate details between each of the faiths or the beliefs. But the 90% of it is about nature. It's about food. It's about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's about connection. And that's something that I really want to see blemished in my holistic economy, where when we stop talking about human rights or human beings, and when we start being inclusive of all these species that not only have been there for thousands of years before us, but actually without these species, we wouldn't even be alive. So when we start calling them, or when we stop using the word human beings and start saying the word beings as a generic term, but I'd like to say, instead of saying human beings or even animals, I'd like to say sovereign beings, because fundamentally, I believe that we are all sovereign beings, where you have the right to do what you want to do and go where you want to go, as long as you are not causing harm to any other beings on the planet, and as long as you are trying to build up society instead of degrading it. So that's what my faith is about. And it's really about how to break down these walls where we can see each other's faiths. Is really just about Mother Nature. And in saying that, it's not just about Mother Nature, it's about the feminine and the masculine, whether it's within the tree or the table. We are all fundamentally the same. In one of the things it says in Jainism is it's a phrase, just like you'd have a phrase in Christianity, which is what you'd say is as a mantra, you would say Hu Sudat Machu. What that means is Machu means I am, Hu means I, and Sudat means soul. So what it's fundamentally saying is that this body that is with me, my flesh, my brown skin, my hair, your skin is different color, or your faith is different maybe, but inside we are all pure souls. That's what we fundamentally are. And how to get back to that, seeing this is just a vehicle, this body is, and when we start doing that, that's when we can really start reconnecting and reviving all these indigenous knowledge that we've lost and forgotten that you mentioned earlier.
I love that mantra. Can you say it again for me? How do we say that?
Yeah, I'll break it down into 3 parts. So it's Hu, Sudat, Machu.
Say that last piece again.
Machu.
Machu.
Yeah.
Hu, Sudat, Machu.
Yes, that's it. Correct. Good. Nice one.
I'd love to invite everybody who is listening and tuning in just to take a few moments to just sit with this mantra and really feel it. So, Hu, Sudat, Machu.
And as I said, Hu is me, Machu is myself, and Sudat is soul. And the basic premise of that mantra is that whether it's the person who's the a Jain like myself who's a vegan, organic advocate, local food, everything, or it could be the person who's locked up in prison for some crime, or it's the some other people that we consider as bad or evil. Our innate being is that whatever our layers that we've developed over the years of our life, of good and bad on the outside, on the inside, we are fundamentally pure souls. Pure souls in the sense that, like, when you want to get a diamond and you have to dig away all the dirt and the rough and everything, we are the diamonds, but we just don't see that. And that's what you are. You are pure souls. And it's really trying to get back to that. And I think that's something that really happens a lot more when we meditate or do something really introspective, because we're closing our eyes and we're forgetting about all these distractions on our outside.
Ho Sudat Macho. Love it.
Yes.
Wonderful. Sagar, as you're speaking, I've seen that same clip of the lion and the little deer or antelope or whatever it was as well. And it's reminding me of so much how important the stories that we tell ourselves are. Because when we think about wildlife shows that we've seen, we usually see the lions and the antelope not being friends, right? They're usually one is prey and one is the predator. But what percentage of their life is that we actually see? Is that just like 5 minutes out of their entire week? Are they friends for the rest of the week? And do we just have this vision of just that not nice 5 minutes, and that's what we think they're like all the time? And I went in Kenya on safari, and the plains that they live in, they're so vast. And we drove around for an entire day, and you never saw any animals fighting. There was nothing. They all just leave each other to it, right? And then similarly, the media portrays people and things to be a certain way, and that's usually not how things actually are. And our history books, history fascinates me. I loved studying history, and I still do. Ancient civilizations, going right back to, learning from the Sumerian tablets and the stuff like that. It's absolutely blows my mind. But every country has its own version of history, and I love. And I interviewed a guy called Elliot, who I think you know as well, Elliot Harlan Bethel. And he talks about how history is his story, right? This story written by the victor, by the survivors. They write it in a way that makes them look good instead of it being the facts. And when I think about different religions and faiths and how many stories we have about how we've interacted in the past and the wars that we've fought against each other, right, which is typically what people might think about and hold the grudges against. But again, in the grand scheme of the tens of thousands of years, I think humans have been around for roughly 260,000 years. You think about the amount of time that we've spent in peace together rather than the times that we've been challenging each other. I think you'll find that most species on the planet are actually very tolerant and accepting of each other. And maybe we just need to reframe the way that we tell stories and the kind of stories that we listen to really factor in more of the experience you just shared with your friend who's a Buddhist. I think that's beautiful, and what an incredible world we could create if everyone was just more curious and more open to listening.
The funny thing is, I met her at this laughter yoga retreat in Bangalore in South India. So I don't know if it's in the same place anymore, but I'd gone for a laughter festival for about 4 days. It was about 10 days laughter yoga retreat. So laughter activities all the time for 10 days. And the one thing I really like to lament on it, or sort of mention, is that after the first day of laughing, I mean, you meet each other. There's Japanese, Chinese, there's people from Israel, there's people from India, all over the world, different faiths. The first day, you're just identifying each other by the different faiths, or what's your name, man, woman, child, whatever. After one or two, probably 10, 12 hours of laughing, we're so engrossed in the laughing, and we don't really care about anything else. That person who is African, or that person who was white, or that person who was black, it just paled into nothing. Because our endorphins in our brain were rushing high, and we were just so buzzed up. And that's really where the connection was, that we sort of sorry, one second. Through all this laughter and everything, all these other differences between us just dissipate completely. And it's the same thing with the different species of animals. And it's also a lot of times, like you said, like how much are these animals really tearing each other for food? A lot of the times not. There was an example probably a few years ago, where out of some forest, I can't remember which part of the world it was, where I think for some reason the wolves were killed off, or maybe some habitat of which is relevant for wolves was cut down. So when the wolves disappeared, then the deers and some other animals started destroying the whole natural habitat. And then they found that when they brought the wolves back, the wolves were sort of like, how do you say, the caretaker of that forest. They would keep things in balance. And, you know, in animals, you've got animals who are eating meat. You've got animals who are eating only plants. But they know that each animal has their different respective roles. The deer knows that the tiger is being designed to eat meat, and the tiger knows that the deer is eating mostly vegetables. They maintain their roles, and the tiger, I don't expect the tiger to give up eating meat and becoming a vegan, because it's been designed to be eating meat. And when there is this differences between not one species of animals, but hundreds or millions of types of species, and they still, a lot of the times, like you said, they're not devouring each other, not eating each other up. If they were to do that, and if the tiger was to eat all the lions, all the deers over a few weeks, or the buffaloes, that would really not make sense for that tiger or its family, because it's basically devoured all the food, and now the food's rotting because no one's eating it, or it's gone waste. And then they'll find in a few months' time that there is no buffaloes or deers to have for food, which incidentally sounds very much like us humans. We are one species. We're consuming and devouring everything, and we waste 50% what we farm or harvest or produce. And then we wonder why prices of food to us are so expensive. I mean, they are still expensive in the sense that the only people who are really benefiting out of this cheap food are the companies. So yes, it's still cheap to us, but the main benefactor is the big companies who make this very cheap food on very cheap labor and abuses of human rights, whatever other rights that they're abusing, avoidance of taxes, and so many other things that when we look at it in the grander scheme of things, we've lost so much. And I think you were saying earlier how what would have been like 50, 60 years ago, how society was growing up. And for me, it's after World War II, or probably after any war in any country, but the war that we can look at is World War II because it's familiar to everyone. And after World War II, people were so poor. They didn't have. There was just in massive poverty. So for food, where did they go? They had to start growing their own local fruits and vegetables, their own seeds and pulses that they would have been growing for hundreds of years in the UK. And when they started doing that, and also at that time, around about the 40s, the quality of nutrition was about 3 times higher. Magnesium and phosphorus was about 2 to 3 times higher. So all these factors really was in itself, it was in itself a faith. People were still going to church and they were still going to their different places in wherever they are in the world, but there was this other aspect that they were growing their own fruits and vegetables. If they couldn't grow it, they would go to the church. And in front of the church, there used to be a courtyard. And the courtyard is a place where people used to congregate to go and buy their fruits and vegetables or produce, whatever it was that they wanted. And they'd go into the church to do their prayers or whatever it was. And they'd come out and there was this community aspect. So the faith thing that I spoke about earlier with regards to my faith or the Buddhism, all these things have been seen as so separate. Like we've divided ourselves, we've compartmentalized faith into one area, food into the other area, resources into the other area, climate change in another area. If we follow and apply some basic principles, which is basically just getting back, and whether you have a faith or not, it doesn't really matter to me. But as long as we start connecting with each other, if a farmer's market is going to me in a local church or a synagogue or mosque, it doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, we are connecting with different modalities of faith and people through food. Tomatoes are not of a particular faith. Some are red and some are yellow, but they're delicious if they're grown local and organic. And for me, it's really simple that as soon as we start going back to the source of food, connecting the source of that food to whether you call it God, whether you call it nature, whether you call it, in Jainism, we call it, in Sanskrit, we call it Atma, which is energy. So the vegetables that I bought from the market, or this table that my computer is on, or the T-shirt I'm wearing, some are going to be vegan products, some are not, but they all have energy, ATMA, they all have energy. And it's like I said, it's not just about the food, it's about the supply chains. How do we really improve society and make sure that our products or services that we want to solve or source are as good if we don't know where it's really coming from and the impact on that person who is slaving away to get that product for us? If we don't have oversight of that, then how can we actually really know its impact? If I, as a vegan, I'm an ardent vegan for many years, but if I was to treat the way I see veganism, like we treat faith, in the sense that all the different faiths are fighting with each other. A lot of my friends, or the people I connect with or communicate with, are not vegan. They eat meat. A lot of the conferences I go to, 90% of the people, or 95% of the people are not vegan. Only maybe 1% of the people are Asian or Indian or Jain. But the reason I go to these conferences is, of course, it's to connect and learn about environment sustainability. But the main reason I go is because I get to be in a room networking and communicating and discussing and solving problems with people who do not look like me or think like me or act like me. It'd be quite boring if I was just in a room full of 100 Jains exactly like me. But for me, the beauty is being with people where we are, maybe we disagree on a lot of things, and then we have to try and resolve how to solve it, and where's the middle path. That's another area of division and confusion that we've, again, there's so many tears of this. If you look at a t-shirt or a jacket, we've got all these. You've torn one side of the seam of the pocket in your jacket or trousers. Then you've torn another seam. The trousers are staying on, but internally the trousers are falling apart. But we just don't know where all the seams are that are tearing apart. And unfortunately for us humans, especially, we are sometimes, a lot of the times, not aware that the seams that are in the pockets or anywhere in the item of clothing that's falling apart, those seams are not being torn apart by you and me or the different faiths. They're being torn apart by certain stakeholders in society that have a vested interest in making sure that we stay divided. And that's one of my other visions for holistic economy, that when we start knowing where products are coming from, the impact on those people, all those things, when we start knowing that, then naturally we start caring for those people as well. But at the moment, pretty much for the last 30, 40 years since TV came about, well, a lot longer than that, we rely on the media to tell us what is going on or not going on in another part of the world. We take it as a given most of the times, and that's what we base. That's the facts that we base our life on. And internet is great, but we also have to make sure that we don't get used by technology, whatever the technology is. But we don't get used by it, but we make sure we use it. And that's that's really, for me, something that we really need to behold and connect with. But it's not going to solve anything if I just say we all need to be vegan, we all need to be organic, because there needs to be the empathy between us. There needs to be the eye-to-eye contact between us. And there needs to be some real, like you mentioned earlier, how we don't care for each other, and nowhere as much as when my parents came to the UK and they were living in Bristol. They could leave their doors open, all different races. They were new in the UK, and people were looking out for each other. And that's another thing that we've lost. But I'm hoping that through this lockdown, that's something that might resurface.
I really hope that too. I really, really do. Sagar, I want to talk to you about something which most people, for them, this might be way out of what they're comfortable with or have heard of before, but I know it's a big part of your journey, and that you've had a massive journey around your health, and that some of your family members as well, your journey with health and alternative methods to maybe what is typically prescribed, shall we say. And so I know as part of your holistic economy plan, and you help, your mission for that is mega, and I know you're looking for people who want to get on board with that too. So do go check that out and get in touch with Sagar if you're interested in helping to create this holistic economy. I know a big part of that is around looking at the different materials that we use, making sure that they are sustainable, right? And also holistic. And this can be things like different plant fibers, can be things like hemp as building materials, as for clothing, and also looking at how we monitor our health as well. So can you tell everyone a little bit about your journey with health and the things that you use or have found to really help you?
Okay, this is where it gets real deep. So my experience with health is, this is from the information that I've had conversations with my mum, because a lot of the things I don't remember from that time. But I've had problems about, as far as I can remember, about 4 or 5 years old. And I used to get irritable bowel syndrome, joint pains. I meet you or some kids at school, they tell me their name, I'd forget the name within 30 seconds or 60 seconds. I couldn't do much sports or anything. So this happened for pretty much 30 years. Never really knew what it was. And then as I around about 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with, I had to go to India to get the tests, because they did the tests within 24 hours, whereas in the UK it would have taken 6 months to get an appointment. So I got on a plane to India, £500, British Airways, and got the test done, and they said that you've got spinal arthritis, which I had no idea what it meant. But they said these are all the steps to go back to the UK, and you've got to make changes in your life. So I gave up progressively over the last 15 years, not straight at once, but as soon as I came home, I said no more alcohol. I wasn't drinking much anyway, but I stopped alcohol. But I was a lightweight, couldn't handle anything, but which was a blessing. So I gave up the alcohol, slowly became more vegetarian, more vegan. I adapted all those changes, fasting, intermittent fasting for the last few years. But my health condition, what was that connected to? So what I learned is that I started looking for the last few years. For some reason, I started looking at vaccines. And I know this is a very controversial subject, and it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people because of the history of what vaccines have supposedly done for society. But this is my experience, and I'm not talking from third-hand experience. I've lived it and breathed it. I've lived it right to the point, bare bones point, where as a kid, 6 years old until 11, I remember be getting ready to go to Boy Scouts every week. And I'm ready to go in my shorts and my cap, and just waiting in the lounge for my dad to take me to the Scouts. And then all of a sudden my body would spasm, my legs, my abdomen, my neck, they would all spasm into sort of paralysis. Not paralysis, but my body would sort of be just having spasms in the abdomen and everything. And for about an hour, my mum and my dad, they saw the solution is to be stretching my legs in the air, because they thought that's going to straighten my muscles, which are twisting. And I feel in my abdomen that my organs are protruding out. sort of through my flesh. Every time that happened since, I always think of the movie Aliens. When I saw the movie Aliens, this is really my twisted humor way of looking at things. But when I saw the movie Aliens, Sigourney Weaver, I think it was, where she's got this thing protruding through her stomach. And that's how it was for me. I'd have a spasm. So when I started looking at vaccines, I realized all these symptoms are the same symptoms I'd had. Memory loss, not building muscle, having weak bone structure, and lots of other things. The last few years, I realized that all my symptoms were similar to that of vaccines. I then found out which of the vaccines I've been given. So I was given vaccines at 2 years old, 7 and 13. And my mum noticed nothing when I was 2, but she said that when I was 7, she noticed that I wasn't developing as most other boys would at that age. They should slowly start to develop some muscle or some bone structure, and I stayed small, very slim, like sort of looking very weak. And so I wasn't developing, and this is something that also my mum told me that when I was in school at about 7, after I think it might have been after my second shot, would have been junior school, she said that the teachers told her once when she dropped me off at school that they noticed that your son looks like he has autism. And she'd be like, what's autism? And I remember my teachers telling me that I would spend, when in class, just looking out the window, just gazing out the window for no reason. And I remember that time that there used to be this term called you're daydreaming class. You're going to get slapped. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to get sent to detention because you're daydreaming. I don't think I was daydreaming, and I don't think the kids who had similar behaviors in class or wherever were daydreaming. I think this was somewhat symptomatic of the injury that I suffered of the vaccines. And there's many other instances where I remember doing certain things, like if I was gone in the shower or anywhere for no reason at all, I don't know why, I'd just be hitting my head against the wall. Not hard, but it's something I noticed. And now when I see kids with vaccine injuries, they're hitting their heads against the wall, they're slamming their heads. And I look at that and I was like, yeah, that's been me. So subsequently out of that, I had all these conditions, got deep into the vaccine stuff, learning about that, learning about the ingredients, learning about the side effects and the impacts. And I gave up. As soon as I'd learnt, I'd been diagnosed with the arthritis. And even before that anyway, because of my Indian tradition of natural medicines, I gave up any pharmaceutical drugs for 15 years now. No alcohol, no pharmaceutical drugs. And the journey I've been on for the last 15 years has been, yes, vegan and organic and local as possible, but also lots of herbs like turmeric, ashwagandha, shilajit. But one of the herbs that has been most important to me has been cannabis oil, which has helped me so much. And I'm not talking just about CBD oil. I'm talking about the full plant. That's helped me a lot. When I have that, then when I do have spasms, it really helps heal the pain a lot. And the source of the spasms, whether it's psychological or physical, yes, it's probably a combination of both. But this plant, which has been a part of my culture for 5,000 years, or more, I don't know, or many other cultures, is derided as a drug. I don't see it as a drug. I don't see turmeric as a drug. It's a plant. That's all it is. I mean, it's not all it is. It's much more than that. But it's a plant. Poppy seeds was another herb that, if you go to any Indian restaurant, you'd get a drink called falada, and they'd put poppy seeds in there. Now, when I went to give I went to give a massive loaf of bread to some guy, homeless guy on the streets in Warren Street, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll have that." Took it out. He says, "No, I can't have it. Sorry, I can't." I says, "Why?" He says, "It's got poppy seeds in it. When I have to go to my local centre to get tested, they test me for drugs. They won't give me any support. They won't give me any support. I'm homeless." And I was like, "You're mad." So I couldn't give him the bread because it had poppy seeds in it. And this is another herb which is rich in its diversity and benefits, just like the cannabis. In my philosophy, in not my philosophy, but in the philosophy of Ayurvedic medicine, cannabis is, for me, the primordial plant, along with ashwagandha and other herbs. But cannabis is the plant that is the most derided. It's regarded as a drug. And I was in India about 6 years ago. At the same time, I'd gone to the Laughter Festival retreat. I went to an Ayurvedic centre and I asked the lady, the Indian doctor, I says, "Look, I can't read Sanskrit. Your Sushrutas, this is what they call the different books on Ayurveda. I says, can you look in that book and translate from me and see what is the term, is there anything mentioned about cannabis?" And she started to laugh at me, thinking, this is a drug, it's a narcotic. It can't be in the text. I says, "Look, I'm sure it is, because this is a very important plant for Shiva, the creator and the destroyer of the earth in Indian philosophy." So she flicked through the book, and then she eventually got to a page, and her face pulled back, was in shock. And I says, "You found it?" She says, "Yes. The cannabis plant is there." Now, the cannabis plant has a term in Sanskrit. It's called, there's many terms for the word cannabis in Sanskrit. But one of the terms is called Vijaya, Vijaya. And then when you look at the word Vijaya, what does Vijaya mean in English? What does it sound like? Vijaya sounds like Vijay, and Vijay in Hindi or Sanskrit means victory. Now I find it no coincidence, the plant that has got so much to give to the world, in Hindi, in Sanskrit and English, its translation is victory. It means victorious. So this plant is so victorious from the time it graced the planet, but we've not been able to see its victorious nature. And that's one of the main plants, along with other plants, that has really helped me with my health, and is helping people around the world. But unfortunately, one of the things that I'm seeing happening to the plant is that it's been turned into a commodity. The cannabis has been ripped apart into CBD and THC, and CBD is being looked at as the in thing. It's not being looked at in an Ayurvedic way, where the THC and the CBD and all the other cannabinoids and terpenes and everything would be seen as one plant. Why is the CBD being extracted and isolated, and the THC being whittled down to almost 0.3%, I think, is because, from what I understand, the CBD does help with the pain, as it does help with me, but then the THC is a major missing link in the whole plant. And in the THC, there is the benefit, which is not work. It does help with the physical pain, but it's also working with the psychological pain as well. And this is my own assessment, speaking to other people, that when the THC is removed, and that's the one of the main possible ingredients that's connecting us to ourselves and nature and each other, and it's going to be stripped out, as what world governments have, they put into law that from March 2021, all CBD has to be taken off the shelves, all the companies, and it's got to comply with certain criteria. And some people in the industry have said that what the end goal of that is that all the CBD will be eventually owned by 4 companies, sold anywhere. And it will be, if you want to have the THC in there, you'd have to be a legal registered company, but the THC, they want it to be completely removed. And the pineal gland that we have here, this is the area that the THC is helping with. When people say that you're stoned when you have cannabis, actually, I don't like that term. I look at it like your brain's having a detox, where it's flooding out a lot of that tension and stress, all that bad energy, and it's having a detox in the same way where you would have a green juice, that you're not going around saying that I've got stoned on some celery juice. You're saying that I had a detox of celery juice or some other, I just fasted. And there is a term for this process where when the THC is working with the CBD and the other terpenes as a whole plant, not an isolated extract, when the whole plant is working together. And I'm not to say that the CBD is not working for people, it does, and I've experienced it. What I'm saying is, from a holistic point of view of Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurveda never administers single herb use. They always administer one herb to be combined with the other. So, for example, if you're taking turmeric, you would take black pepper as a catalyst to speed up the benefit of turmeric. What we've done in the cannabis plant is that we've not only just not taking the CBD with some other plant, we've actually extracted a lot of the benefit from that plant, cannabis, one of the main ingredients, and we have isolated it. And the reason why it's isolated is because when you isolate it and add some of your own ingredients or synthesize it, you've made it into your own drug. It's now not a plant of nature. So this word drug is conflating the plant as a drug by abusing it so much. And it's going to get to the point where we not only not have access to organic seeds, but we don't have access and knowledge to what is our basic medicinal herbs and actually how to use them in congruation with each other. And I would say that's been a lot of my journey, where even if you look at the prices of these herbs when you go to the stores, how much they cost, they're so inextricably expensive. And I know this because when I've gone to Ayurvedic centers in India and got herbal medicines, for example, something like Shilajit, which would cost a few pounds there. Over here, you're talking for about 25 grams, you're talking about 30 pounds. And unfortunately, most of the people who are actually making money out of this plant, whether it's been pumped up through, as an expensive product in a health store, or whether it's been synthesized, the people who benefit from the profits of this plant are not even the people who have the knowledge, or they're not even the indigenous people. They've trustingly given their knowledge to other people, and then their knowledge and their cultures and their traditions have been abused. And this is for me a real problem, that these plants and these benefits of these herbs that we're boasting about, they're not only being taken away from the public, but they are more and more being taken away and disenfranchised from the people who are the indigenous people, who are the elders. And what will happen for our knowledge when those elders and the indigenous knowledge and all that's disappeared? And there used to be a time in the UK when there used to be witches, and witches were burnt on the stake, I understand, because they were professing what we are professing now. And what's now just an upgraded version. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I know me and you, we've exchanged many stories that people might call conspiracies, right? And there's lots of reasons why these big pharmaceutical companies and other corporations might want to keep this information secret, because it's not so profitable, right? If everyone can just grow their own herbs in their garden and grow their own cannabis, and they can heal themselves without needing to go to a doctor, it's going to be a very different world that we live in. And I know this is a big piece, this whole holistic health piece, because it's my journey too. I'm very similar. I stopped any kind of pharmaceuticals years ago now, and food is my medicine. And since doing that, I'm healthier and happier than I've ever been. And similarly, also the journey of going from being a meat eater, where steak was my favorite food, to now being a vegan and animal rights activist and promoting this lifestyle to people for health, for ethical reasons, for our planet, for everything. And I know there's some really beautiful crossover. Sagar, I've seen some amazing changes just in the past few years. And one of the conspiracies, I guess, or one of the theories, the things I've looked into is around plant medicines, and why the government might not want us to use plant medicines. And for thousands of years, tribes have used plants like cannabis, like ayahuasca, like mushrooms for medicinal purposes, right? To elevate consciousness, to activate their pineal gland, like you said. And I've seen now this becoming legal in the world. It was made illegal. Why? Because possibly if people are all healthy and awakened and activated, they might be harder to control. I don't know. That's one theory. It's a theory I give some credit to. But now cannabis has become legal in so many places for medical reasons, and that is growing all the time. Mushrooms, particularly psilocybin mushrooms, are now legal in some places, which is to me is fantastic, because it's been shown to be able to treat depression and various different mental illnesses. And I see this becoming something that is just going to expand more and more and more as the benefits of these plants become aware. So thank you so much for sharing your experience of cannabis. I know I've heard wonderful stories about cannabis being used to treat every possible kind of health condition, and people getting amazing results with it. So I guess for us we're coming towards the end of this particular chat, and I know we're going to have lots more chats in the future. Around your holistic economy piece, I know there's a lot to it. It's about how we finance, how the finance systems in the world work, and that the current financial system is not optimal, and that there are more effective ways that we can support our local economies. And I absolutely love all the piece that you have around communities. I love the parts that you have around how we can help make our earth a nicer place to live, and stop destroying the natural habitats for all the animals. And you have a piece in there too around open journalism and transparency, so that people can get the real information without it being censored and without them being made to be afraid. And then all of the parts around human rights. It's a really wonderful system, and I'm super excited for everyone to get involved in this and for us to make this change. We've got 10 years, and I think a lot can happen in 10 years. I guess right now, Saga, if people are interested in getting involved and changing the world, what can they do? What are the next steps? How can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you? And what advice can you give to anyone who's excited about this right now after listening?
Yeah, I'd just like to quickly mention, you said about the cannabis and it's being legal and everything. I'd just like to mention the fact that the word legal is the word of the courts. Now, I'm not a legal person at all, but turmeric is not, it's just a part of nature. Vegetables, spinach, they're just there. No one's made it illegal to actually get those tomatoes or those vegetables and growing them. So this word legal, I think we really need to look at, do we want cannabis to be legalized or do we want it to be decriminalized? And more so than decriminalized, I'd like to come back to one of the main crux of my talk with you today, Luke, is the one word which I've mentioned probably with you a few times before, which is in Sanskrit we call it Swaraj. And Swaraj in English, which is a word that Mahatma Gandhi was using a lot to get independence from the British Raj, it meant sovereignty, right to ownership of yourself. So I think if there's one thing I'd give as a message to people is we need to look at not whether this plant is legal or not. We need to look at whether this plant is sovereign, whether it's still in our ownership or whether it's within the ownership of the companies. And just because something's legal doesn't mean that we have ownership over it. It doesn't mean that we can share the seeds like our great-grandfathers used to do. So that's just one thing I wanted to very quickly mention. And how people can get in touch with me would be at my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/holistic economy 2030, as in the numbers holistic economy facebook.com/holistic economy 2030. And holisticeconomy.com is my website, which will be up and running in the next few days. And you can also, just get hold of me there. I'll also be looking to have a channel on Telegram as well. So I can just post out things because of the inability to maybe access other social media for various reasons at the moment. So that's how you can get in touch with me. But I really want to emphasize sovereignty. Democracy has been told us as this ideology that's going to give us freedom. But we've seen what's happened with democracy in the UK. It's not giving us that. What we want is sovereignty. Democracy, you're free to move about, but doesn't mean you're free to move about wherever you want and however you want, as we can see over the last 2 months. So sovereignty is the word I'd like to emphasize. It means the right to self-rule, the right to self-govern. And when we start doing that and stop heeding to the governments and the corporations, and we start heeding, or not even heeding, when we start looking after each other, then that is sovereignty, because we're not heeding to any entity, we're working with each other. And that's one last thing. That's the last thing I'd like to close off with. I could go on for another hour with you, but even with my bad voice, but I'll leave it at that.
I'm with you 100%. The idea that we can live in a world where people can self-govern, where we don't need someone to tell us what's right and wrong, because we inherently know exactly what that is, and where our governments are used as a way to help us to distribute resources rather than telling us what we can and can't do. I'm totally with you on creating that world. brother. So let's raise a generation of sovereign beings who know what it's like to make their own choices. I think that's a really wonderful way for us to end. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing your truth. And everyone, check out holisticeconomy.com if you want to get involved, if you want to be a part of this. I know there's lots of opportunities in everything, and we didn't even cover all the bases of the plan.
One last thing. Just want to say, yes, we didn't cover it a lot because I carried off and meandered off into one area. The one thing I'd like to say is that wherever solutions we come up with, even the ones I'm coming up with, it should always be open to being hacked. Being hacked means it should always be susceptible to being always modified. My model is not the perfect model for today or next year, and it should be hackable in an open source, democratic, sovereign way so that we're always improving. And that's why I have to say that. And to really close off, Luke, thanks very much for giving me this amazing opportunity to engage with you in these conversations. And thanks very much for your training for the last few months to me, and really hope to manifest my holistic economy with all of you, and also help you to manifest your visions and goals as well. So thank you very much. And I would like to very quickly close off with a mantra, which is a very short one, which is of Jainism, which is, I say, in Sanskrit, we say Jai Jinendra. And what that means is that it's not me, Sagar, saying to you, thank you, Luke. Jai Jinendra means that the soul that sits inside this body here is saluting the soul within you. And it is from one soul to the other. So Jai Jinendra, and thank you once again.
Jai Jinendra, and thank you so much as well. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Leading Edge Conversations. I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you feel expanded. I'd love to know your comments, views, thoughts below. Please do share this far and wide wherever you feel to. You have my full permission to share this openly. We want to get as many people as possible to hear these things. And stay tuned. We're going to have another incredible episode coming up for you where we interview someone else who is living on the edge. And just for one more time, thank you, everyone who's tuning in, for living on the leading edge of consciousness and for daring to shine your light so bright. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leading Edge Conversations podcast. Make sure to check out our other episodes where we have incredible interviews with people truly living on the leading edge of consciousness.